Honey Bojo, Kinawea, Dikichinendum, Vijayan Nongom. I'm really happy to be here today. Uh, Cody McGregor, Indigenous Cause. Galwin to get seen Anishinaabe and Noswin. I don't know my Anishinaabe name yet. And but that's something that is going to come. And now that I have little ones, I think that's something that we can do together. And really that's the essence of my topic today, is talking about roles and responsibilities, but also being a representative or an ambassador to the household of Ojibwe culture, or just Indigenous culture. And I'll get more into that shortly, but I think really wanted to emphasize what Linda said, is acknowledging our ancestors, because the love I feel for my children and the love that we as parents feel for our children is how our ancestors felt about us. It's the way that we do things, is the way life works. You want the best for your children, any parent does, and you want the best for your grandchildren. You know, someday I'll get there, and so on and so forth. So throughout history, we've had difficult times as a people, but we're coming out of it, and we're seeing a lot of resurgence in traditional teachings and incorporating those teachings into the way we live. I come to you today as a brother. I'm someone's brother. I'm a son. I'm a father, most importantly, but I'm also a co-parent. And that's really what I want to focus on, is not only my role as a father in my family, but as far as Indigenous ancestry is concerned, it's myself and then my children. And I'm really lucky to have just amazing partners who are really embrace my culture, our culture, and have been super supportive. And I'm lucky, I'm really fortunate to have that. But it makes me think, you know, what does it mean to incorporate traditional teachings into our life? I really enjoyed last week's discussion with Mary, and I could listen to her talk all day. And she really said something that had an impact. On me. How to I'll bring that back. It's on my second page here. But when she, well, I guess I touched base on a bit of it now, but the berry fast and a coming of age thing. I had a question kind of to her as a man. I know that that's really not my, say necessarily my place. And I, you know, speaking with tradition, and that's something for women in the community to help our young women with as they age. But you know, as a father, one of my close friends, childhood friends forever, is a single parent, just sole parent to a young lady now who's started, maybe not necessarily on her berry fast, but she's on at that time, right? So for me, I have a lot of questions, because, you know, she doesn't have an Indigenous mother, or she's really not Indigenous at all. But I think because me and her dad are so close, and she's well aware of my ancestry and Mackenzie's ancestry and Weston's, that we're part of like this extended family. So I feel like my role, and again, just doing the best I can, is to relay some of that information from those teachings, and just to give a young person insight into a worldview that's still so close to them. Even though I'm not her dad, I'm the next best, like right next to her dad, right, all the time. So there's all sorts of different shapes of families, you know. Saying that to my daughter last night, we have, you know, sometimes there's a mom and a dad. Sometimes there's a mom and a mom. Sometimes there's a dad and a dad. Sometimes there's just a dad. sometimes there's just a mom, and that's okay. And as a 7-year-old, she kind of processes that and sees the way our family nucleus is, and she understands it, right? So as a father and as a man in the community, I really, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And so I just want to have a really nice discussion today, even pull some ideas from you guys. I know it's early in the morning, but we'll get that chat file going. And I guess the first thing is traditional parenting. Traditional parenting. Let's collect some ideas here. And what do we think when we hear traditional parenting? I think culture-based teachings. Start us off. Whoops. Culture-based teachings, respect. I was talking to Ken's about it last night before she went to bed, and she said, like, love, families loving each other. Our 7 grandfather teachings. Teachable moments, you know, being aware of different teachings and taking the opportunity, not necessarily to discipline as a parent, but to provide a teachable moment and saying, hey, well, you know, this is not really the way we do it. If you're talking about, you know, maybe bullying or, you know, kids being overly physical with each other, then, you know, it's about respecting each other and taking the time rather than discipline to sit down and enlighten them. Teachable moments. All sorts of things when you think traditional parenting. But one thing for me when I think traditional parenting is I think healthy and intact relationships. That's what everybody wants. I mean, we all work for a healthy relationship and a relationship that's going to last us. But things don't always go the way we plan. And as frontline workers, I think it's really important to understand where the community members that we work with, where things that they're going through, put ourselves a little bit in their shoes and better understand their trials, right? To give us an opportunity to better serve them. So traditional parenting and co-parenting. So as a co-parent myself, it's definitely difficult. It's been so challenging over the years, but we're really coming into a really good routine now. And when people are young, we get our impressions on what we want to be when we grow up. As a young man, as a child, I'm really fortunate to have come from a family where both parents were present and in, you know, a loving relationship. A lot of my peers as well had 2-parent households. It was a rarity in the 80s and 90s I feel like it was a rarity for there to be split households or blended families. And in 2020 now, it's so common. I see, you know, all the parents when we go to pick up our kids from school, you know, we don't know people's backstories, but I mean, you can kind of see when, you know, it's 2 parents who are co-parenting and there. It's so common. The kids will tell you as well. But we get our impressions and what do we want to be in terms of parenthood. That we decide on that very, very young. And for me, one of my close friends had a sister and she had a child young, and we were all there to kind of help together to be of assistance, any assistance we could help raise Anastasia. And I saw it firsthand. She's got a dad and he was going through some things, and it was a different time back then, but she would kind of come home from weekends with him and would kind of have that cigarette smell on her and things like that. And I must have been maybe 12 or 13 at the time, and I decided early and definitively that when I grew up that I would, not to say not be like that, to put anyone down, but I knew the direction that I wanted to go, and that was not the way. I always wanted to be a present and caring father, and I am a present and caring father. And I always wanted to be someone that my child could go to for warmth, for love, for affection, for food and shelter, be all of those things. And by doing that, by deciding that early, and by now putting those thoughts and dreams into motion and making them reality, I feel like I'm breaking the cycles of the residential school legacy. Not only that, but overcoming the stereotypes as a father, as a man, but I think more importantly as an Indigenous man. Society has perspectives on Indigenous parents, and it's been a really tough go for Indigenous people in terms of parenthood. So society has a perspective, or has stereotypes of Indigenous people as parents. That doesn't define us, but it can impact people, and it can be damaging. But again, it doesn't define us. And you hear, the terminology, absent father, or whatever, that negative connotation is of men or as a father. And I think that by doing the work that we do here with our gestational training and traditional parenting training, we are really dismantling the system that would have us believe that we are inadequate parents. So co-parenting. As an Indigenous member of the community and kind of the ambassador for Indigenous culture for my family, there are a lot of things that I do. And I feel like if I had been in a relationship with another Indigenous person, that maybe perhaps theoretically I wouldn't be as driven or as eager to really pronounce these different aspects of our culture to our children, because they would have full exposure, 360-degree exposure to our community. But that's not the way my journey's been going. And I think that there's value in that. I mean, things that I do as a parent to incorporate our tradition and culture? Well, first and foremost, language. Language is huge, a huge sense of identity for me and the kids. And I started that journey as an adult. No one in my family spoke the language to us. My mom's Mohawk, my dad's Ojibwe, and it just wasn't a thing, I feel like, in my household for us to be taught language. They didn't know much themselves, but again, we're talking about that intergenerational trauma. There was something somewhere that kind of lowered the flame of language. So as a young man, I was expecting my first child, Mackenzie, and I decided that I would go back to school to learn a bit of language. And that would be something that I would be able to have that would strengthen the bond between me and my daughter. And it's kind of unprecedented. For a long time, there was no way for us to access our language or access a lot of these teachings. So us gathering here today to discuss it, and over the coming weeks and last week as well, is huge for us. I don't think sometimes we don't appreciate how big this is and how momentous of an occasion this is. So language is huge, and there's all sorts of great literature to support that, infant, or when they're first learning their languages, that learning two languages does a lot for the brain. And for me, I mean, the great big moment for me was Mackenzie must have been 2 years old. I had been speaking broken Ojibwe to her for all of her life. and I was putting her down for a nap. And you know what? It was about this time of year. It was in October. The leaves were starting to change. I remember it vividly because I went outside and I cried real hard. But she was sleeping, putting her down for her nap, and she's just a little bean and a little ball, and I thought she was asleep, and she turned over and she put her hand on my arm and she said, "Gazogin," and that was it. She turned over and she went back to sleep. But she woke up at 2 years old, and that was all she said was, "I love you." And that for me, I was like, we're doing the right thing. Sorry. Makes me feel so good, you know? Us as a community and a people, we're resilient and we've been through a lot. But experiencing that was really, I wanted to share that with people because it just made me feel so good, right? So as a co-parent, incorporating language into our lives has been huge, and I can't wait till Weston gets to be a little bit older, and he'll pick it up too, right? So it makes me feel good. So our language is reclaiming that is a big deal. Not only language, but song and dance. From a man's perspective, and having a young daughter who's really interested in powwow. I mean, the kids have always loved going to the powwow and hearing the drum. It just moves your chest. And we listened to a song. I mean, it's kind of the only song I have on my iTunes that's kind of a powwow song. It's Big River Creed. It's just an intertribal song, but we listen to that all the time here. Not all the time, but regularly. And I think incorporating song and dance for children is hugely beneficial. I learned fancy shawl dance because I needed to have that to show my daughter, because there's not an Indigenous mother who's a fancy shawl dancer here. So that's me. I wear many hats now. So that's another thing too, when we're working with families, if they're blended families, supporting the men or supporting our women in those different elements that maybe aren't traditional to their, black and white, cut and dried, quote unquote, place in the community. Like and I would love to see like if there was like a class or like a program that we could go to learn how to maybe those powwow steps for fancy shawl and jingle dress, and I would be there, right? And I would hope that you wouldn't get those kind of funny looks because we're doing it for our children. Another element of traditional parenting that we can incorporate today in 2020 is our prayer and worldview. Prayer and worldview. Smudging regularly here, having medicines. And I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but our men's gestational kit has a little wee mini smudge bowl. So for members in your community, people may not have access to medicines or medicines to those tools to pass on to their children. This is a really great resource, and this has all of that stuff in it. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. But I see like magic happening with the children. So we'll start let's start our day in a good way. We'll get our smudge bowl, we'll get our medicines, and we'll have our smudge, and I'll say a prayer in Anishinaabe, and we'll do our smudge. And my 1-year-old, he's a little over one, he's 13, or a year and 3 months. Um, he's starting to talk. He started to walk on my birthday, so you can, there's got to be about that tall. He's a happy little guy. But when we do the smudging, like he sees us kind of bring the smoke over our head, and while he's not necessarily doing that yet, like he puts his hand out and like he kind of lets it dangle around in the smoke. I kind of pull it back to him. So they're learning at an early age what it is to be connected to the earth, what it is to have this indigenous worldview. And again, as when we think about our children growing up to one day be adults of their own, we want to make sure that they have all the tools necessary, anything that they need to pass that on to future generations. So it's prayer and worldview. Another thing when I think about traditional parenting and being an Indigenous person, I think nutrition and cuisine. And Mackenzie last night was like, "What's that word, cuisine?" I was like, "Well, it's like the style that you cook your food in." She's like, "Oh, okay." I just did a really great talk last week on early childhood traditional nutrition. And the essence of this is to look at our traditional foods and what are some ways that we can prepare those foods that are good for, a baby of 1 year old when they're starting to make that move from breast milk to solids. That's a big time. And incorporating traditional foods can be difficult. Through my readings, I found a religion or a culture on the other side of the world, and they have a ceremony in their culture, and it translates to like baby's first rice. So in their culture, when babies are making that switch from breast milk to solids, like that's a big thing. And they acknowledge that, and they come together as a community to celebrate that. I don't know anything of like that for us, but I feel like we just do that. I mean, we just celebrate things like with our children as Indigenous people. So nutrition and cuisine, what does it look like to incorporate those foods into your household? I was saying to Linda this morning, I'm from Whitefish River, but I do not eat barely any fish, and for a long time I haven't really taken the time to think why. So in the past 2 weeks, after who knows how many years it's been since I've had fish, I got fish from the grocery store and came home and prepared it because especially preparing for this speech on early childhood nutrition, I wanted to practice that, put that into motion. And we tried it last night, and again, Mackenzie and I did, and she was saying, she wasn't a big fan. She's like, I don't think I like fish. And I was like, well, it's not that you don't like fish, it's just that I haven't found a way to prepare it for you that, suits your taste buds. So we're going to continue experimenting with it. And I was really lucky to listen to grandmother Renee. She had something really great to say about traditional foods, and it was all of the plants, they follow their original instruction, and they're here for our sustenance. They're here to keep us alive. And while, sometimes kids scrunch their nose at, green beans or some sort of vegetable, and they say, oh, I don't like that. And I took the time to say, Mackenzie, and again, taking these teachable moments, right? Rather than a discipline moment, it's a teachable moment. And what is our, worldview that supports that? Saying, well, this little bean, he grew his whole life, and he's here for you. He's giving himself to you to eat him and to make sure that you're healthy. And just kind of saying that, right? She's like holding her green bean and she's looking at it, she's like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And then she continued to eat like, 3 or 4 more. She might not get that that type of teachable moment from the rest of our family, as I'm the only one who's Indigenous. So again, being an ambassador to the culture, it's super important that we kind of incorporate that in any way we can. You know, keeping your ears open, keeping your eyes open for opportunities to enlighten our youth is really, really important. So us as frontline workers, we're all here. We all work with parents and co-parents at some capacity. There are people here who do social work, and I take my hat off to anyone who's helping our communities in like the social work approach. I couldn't do it. I don't have the stomach for it, but it's so needed. But everyone, all of us gathered here, we all work with Indigenous parents and co-parents at some capacity. And we might not know people's stories or people's situations, and that's okay, but be definitely reassured that the work that you do, the work that we all do to promote wellness, be it holistically, be it family support, you know, things that are happening in the courts, nutrition and physical exercise here at the IDHC, and just onwards. It's so important. And then again, to bring it back, the work that we're doing is repairing the damage that was done and has been done over the years with the residential school legacy. So as much as bad things have happened, we are in charge of the good things that now are happening, and we have an opportunity to build our communities up to where they once were, if not like better. So working with frontline, working with community, people who are co-parents, that's one of the most difficult things I think a parent could go through next to losing a child completely. There's so much fear, you know, associated with what if a couple is together and there's children and they're choosing to go separate ways. That is extremely tolling, not only on children, but on the parents as well. And sadly, not everyone, unfortunately, makes it through that kind of those times in that separation. So teachings like last week when Mary was speaking about the stages of life, and when you come to the end of your life, and you kind of there's two directions you can go. And for people who take their own lives, like having those teachings available to people, maybe people haven't heard those teachings, maybe they haven't been exposed to it, because there's a huge problem in our communities with people taking their lives, and or living with destructive self behaviors. You even think, like when we think of harm reduction, providing cultural teachings is a form of harm reduction. And part of a talk that I have coming up is talking about that harm reduction, not only in the classic ways that we think of harm reduction with drug and alcohol abuse and risky lifestyle behavior, but taking that harm reduction and applying it to the smaller aspects of it, like choosing healthy foods, right? Sometimes some people might not be in a place that's hard enough for them to take their own life, or maybe they're not drinking or using drugs, but maybe some people are engaging in a self-destructive behavior through the foods that they eat, through the activities that they do or don't do, right? Like just not taking care of yourself. I had never thought about harm reduction in terms of diabetes prevention, but I do believe that that there's something there, and it's worth talking and exploring further. So what can we do as frontline workers to support parents and to help everyone get on track with different forms of traditional parenting? Well, right off the bat, I mean, having access community events and having access with traditional healers, someone that these people can talk to, um, creating a safe space for those discussions to happen, and keeping medicine there for people's emotions um, if and when they need that extra kind of support. We can help promote traditional parenting by promoting self-care for parents. You know, especially during times of separation, it's very easy for people to slip into depression and stop taking care of themselves. It's a sense of trauma, I mean, with going through these changes. And until things settle and families can get into a good routine, there's a lot of uncertainty. And that builds up, and it presents itself in forms of stress, which we know is critical to our health, our physical health, not to mention our mental and emotional health. Providing teachings as best we can. I mean, I'm really happy to continue on my journey and be exposed to really great teachings. As a father, I feel like it's my responsibility. And again, Mary kind of talked about that last week, was that for young men in the community, or for anybody in the community, taking teachings and bringing those, carrying them with you, you never know when there's going to be a teachable moment that arises, and you can, pass that on to your children. Someday we'll get to the point, as time goes on, that us young people here, are knowledge keepers in our community. So it's important that we acknowledge that, and we do our best to expose ourselves to as much as we can. We can do stuff. We can support families with traditional parenting by, as organizations, continuing with community gatherings, continuing with talking circles, support circles, sweats, making a community accessible women's berry fast, all sorts of coming of age things. These are critical to the development of our youth, and having those available to people just gives us another avenue to reconnect with each other and reconnect with culture. Extremely important. And I think more than anything is support each other in any way that we can. And sometimes, just being there to listen to somebody can make all the difference in the world for them. So what do we want? What do we as frontline workers and as members in the community, what do we want for our families? What do we want for our community? I would like to see more fathers talking about fatherhood, talking about their experiences. I'm really passionate about this side project that someday I hope will come to fruition, but a Dads and Tots program. And COVID obviously has put a hamper on us gathering, especially with our kids. But I would love to see a community Dads and Tots, where maybe it's like a morning once a month where we gather and we have, healthy snacks and fun games where the kids can be social with each other, and maybe have, a guest speaker who's talking and some element of some sort of teaching, right, that people can take. Just the camaraderie of people coming together who have similar situations. People, that does a lot of good for people. So more dads talking about being dads. For the young men who are coming into soon to be maybe fatherhood, preparing them to embrace the role of parenthood, preparing them for the journey ahead of them, equipping them with tools that we have. If we have tools that will help people, we need to really get that into the hands and the homes that could make the best use of them. And when we do this, we strengthen our communities, we strengthen our families, we strengthen ourselves. The work that we do, you feel really good about. You know when you've done something good, and heck, you don't even know if it's had an impact on anybody, but you know, if you've done well, you know, you feel well about yourself. It helps parents and partners, co-parents, helps them better navigate, you know, the task of co-parenting children, which is not easy. And again, we're strengthening our communities, and we're ultimately building a better future for all of us. And Indigenous fathers, Indigenous fathers are more than the stereotypes. They're more than what sometimes the courts may see, and they're more than you know, just a form of child support, and they're more than what the media portrays us to be. We are people who love our children. We are the capacity to be nurturing and caregivers. When mom isn't around, and if dad is the only parent, you have to be nurturing. You have to be all those amazing qualities that our women are. I think bygone are the days where we assume that men are, you know, out there working hard, you know, kind of stoic and rarely showing affection to our children. That's not reality. I don't think it ever was. So I think it's really important that we give the men in our communities the credit where it's due, and encouraging them, building them up, because that's a huge support pillar for us as a nation, as peoples. It's a good thing. So traditional parenting, and what does traditional parenting look like from that common scenario of a co-parenting plan, right? It's totally open to interpretation. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Every family's going to be, you know, a little bit different from the next. But us as frontline workers, having these discussions, thinking about, you know, this stuff, we can make great choices and better, more informed choices, and support where it's needed. And speaking of support where it's needed, so the two things I wanted to share with you today, and these are two items that have came in the box package that Krista sent you, right? Yeah, okay. But we have our women's gestational kit from us here at the IDHC, and this like really is like the physical embodiment of those tools, and what is it to promote health and wellness. That aspect of Indigenous nutrition and cuisine, you know, we have our plates. This is great for mom and dad and grandma or grandpa. So that's included in the women's kit. Also here we have our water diffuser. Ken's has got one of these on. She's send her off to school this morning. I asked her if she wanted to put berries in hers, and she's like, no, I just want regular water. I was like, okay. And I tightened it. I guess I tightened it real tight yesterday when I sent her to school, and it was so tight she couldn't get it off. And because of COVID, like nobody can help her get the lid off her bottle. I was like, oh baby, I'm so sorry. So this is super handy to have, you know. A lot of good stuff in here. This is our 9-month pregnancy wellness journal, as well as prenatal yoga DVD. A change pad for baby. All of our resources. This seed package, me and Ken's planted one of these seed packages in a small cardboard box with like a little piece of plastic in it, and they're doing really good. So you plant these, they will grow, and I can't keep any plants healthy. Our essential oil and our moonstone. Yeah, and our pregnancy wellness booklet. This has been here for a not to say a long time, but what's new, and I'm really excited to have these discussions today about, you know, fathers' roles and responsibilities, or just partners' roles and responsibilities as well. Our community is so dynamic and it's so beautiful, and bygone is the nuclear family of like the 1950s, right? Like, it doesn't exist anymore. So this has been something that we've been offering and supporting communities with for some time now. But what's new on the block is our men's gestational kit, or a partner's gestational kit. This is fairly recent, Krista. This came along about shortly after I arrived at the IDHC, and Krista had this great idea that, you know, we would have something similar to support our men. And again, just giving them the tools and believing in them to say, here, you know what, you can use this and it's going to be great. And, you know, people just need that support. It looks a lot like the mom's gestational kit, but in it we have a small smudge bowl, some medicines. Again, people might not have access to medicines, and so being able to provide that to people, you know, little smudge bowl. There is pop this open here. There's a little booklet that talks about the beginning the journey of fatherhood. Again, preparing our young men for their upcoming full-time job. This is a really good thing. So everything in here supports our men. Come play with me. I always look forward to hearing those teachings that there's such a strong connection with infants and mom. Nothing will ever change that. But when the kids become toddlers and they start kind of being mobile and doing things, there's a huge connection with dad. And the Come Play With Me is included. This goes out to community and to homes as a package. But it's important that this is in here because, you know, for dads, sometimes you're kind of scratching your head and saying, well, I mean, what do I do to help? What can I do to help? I mean, other than just be there, right? And doing all the things that, I mean, just come natural. For me, that's cooking and cleaning, taking out the garbage, working with the lawn, doing the laundry, folding the laundry, making the beds, walking the dogs. Like, it's so much that we can do. But I think, you know, sorry, I put that down on Weston's little walker. It's done now. So these are available. Everyone has these kits. Take some time to check it out. And if anybody needs more, if you have someone in your community that is expecting parents, let's get it out to them. Let's show them right off the bat that we're here to support you, and let us know what you need, right? And giving people a solid foundation to build a healthy family is what I want, is what we all want. I've been haven't been looking at the comment section. I kind of get tunnel vision sometimes when I'm when I'm talking. So I'm just gonna go back here and go over some of these. Yeah, I get super weepy sometimes when I talk about the kids. Uh, yeah, a lot of men out there are passionate and caring about their families. It's a beautiful thing to see when, especially as a father, and I see kind of younger men being, going through that transition of being a new father. Like, you know, it's it's great. I think it's hard to describe. Hmm. Yeah.
Cody, I see a question here. What parenting challenges did you have when you first became a father?
Right off the bat, and I speak about this candidly because it was a really challenging time for me. And me and my partner at the time, we had been together, and we were kind of slowly growing apart, but we're really close friends. And that initial separation, which happened super early in Mackenzie's life, she couldn't have been a much older than 2 years old. We decided that we would continue on our journey together as partners, not as romantic partners, but as life partners. And making that adjustment from comprehending in my own head, like I said, it's similar. It's alike to losing a child when you go from having your child 100% of the time every day for the rest of your life, and then you're having to share that with the mother. And you can't help, I think it's human nature, you can't help but want more, but doing what's best for the children, and really being there to support, as a co-parent, and sharing that time. It took a long time for me to come to terms with that, and to be able to think objectively rather than dwell on the pain of that separation. So if you've never gone through it, don't. But I mean, it's so tolling on people, and they need all the support that they can get. So yeah, that was a big thing, was just being apart. Mm-hmm.
Well, Cody, miigwech so much. I've got another question for you, and I'm just myself going to say on behalf of everyone, thank you so much, miigwech so much, for just being so open and so passionate and sharing with us, because I'm getting teary-eyed now. I think it's something we need to hear and we need to see, and it's so heartening. I've been really moved this morning. Another question, what has supported you through the co-parenting process and even as a father?
My friends, and I say my family, but it's been my friends, because I mean, I don't know if it's a man thing. Yeah, I mean, like, I listen to my parents, and they have sympathy, and they can relate to the struggles of being a co-parent. But I think it's been my other friends, the young men that I grew up with, and now we're parents. And having someone who you feel like can relate to you and supports you, and hears you and acknowledges kind of what you're going through, that's been so helpful to me. And I think right off the top of my head, like, I don't know where I would be without my friends. And I think it's important role for men. I mean, seeing how it's benefited me, I think I understand how it's made me feel. So I'm really passionate about providing that support in any way that I can to other men, right? And but everyone's going to be different. But for me, it's been the circle of men in my life who have been supportive.